My name is Jason Shirka. I have the privilege of working with an organization, a clandestine, undercover, underground organization known as TLS, otherwise known as the Light System. It's all about how to have a finger in certain places to influence things and make things move, to be able to beat the monster from within. It's understanding that we have the potential within. We have the ability to do what all the great leaders and religious leaders and spiritual leaders have done in the past. A caterpillar transforms and metamorphosizes into a butterfly. That's basically shapeshifting. We call that natural. So when a human being can do something like that, for whatever reason, we call it supernatural, and it's only because we're living subnatural lives. The Bible never caused war. The religious leaders, the people that started spreading those messages through their own corrupted lens, were the ones that caused war. And right now we're going through the process of unwinding and untangling that mess, energetically speaking, to eventually get to the same point that we were at thousands of years ago, which is one world, one life, love for all, compassion and unity. That's what the age of love is, and that's where they're trying to bring us to. The reason why TLS works with these beings is because it's all bringing back universal awareness, bringing us all together. Time and space doesn't exist in the same way that it does from that perspective, from that awareness, from that consciousness. So it's a completely different way of doing things, and it starts with awareness. It's something that's beyond the laws of physics as we know them in application today. The craft becomes an extension of the operator's consciousness, and that's how they're going those distances and those speeds. I know it sounds like it's out of a movie, but these are real things. My name is Jason Shirka. Many of you may know me as the founder of Unified TV and Unified Healing. But there's a very, very exciting part of my life that I want to dive into, that I want to share with all of you. That's the fact that I have the privilege of working with an organization, a clandestine, undercover, underground organization with incredible intentions known as TLS, otherwise known as the Light System. What you're about to hear over the next few episodes may blow your mind. It's going to challenge your belief systems. It's going to break them down, and that's okay. My job is not to convince you. My job is not to persuade you. My job is to share what I've been asked to share with the world. And what you do with the information you're about to hear is completely up to you and your own free will. So TLS stands for the Light System, and their overall mission statement is, how do we make this world a better place? As cliche as that may sound, how do we make this world a better place without interfering with the free will of humankind? So they have many, many different ways of doing that, and it's a very fine line between interference in a way that doesn't take away from free will and interference that does. So it's all about walking that line, figuring out different avenues and ways to do it so they can assist and guide us along the way, instead of doing it for us, because they can.
So you describe TLS as a group of people. How many people are we talking about here?
The latest numbers that I know, roughly 8,500 initiated agents in the organization, some of which are very well known, most of which are not. So they're all over the world. There's a branch in every major city in the world. California, New York, Melbourne, Sydney, all over the world, literally everywhere. But when I say all over the world, I'm not just talking about planet Earth. We're talking about off planet as well. You're talking about an intergalactic organization that's based here, that does things here. Most of the individuals are human beings, but they do work with extraterrestrial life. As crazy as that sounds, that's just what's going on. So that's what I have to share.
And you say around 8,500 people. Is that number growing? Like, is the group in an expansion phase right now?
We're in an interesting time at the moment because of 2020, 2021, all the chaos that happened all around the world. There were a lot of undercover operations going on, where at the time, prior to COVID, let's call it, there were 7,000 initiated agents. 2,000 were killed. They died in, call it the line of fire, undercover operations, mainly having to do with underground tunnels. That's something we could speak about if you'd like, but Basically, ever since that happened, they started expanding further, and now I believe they're the biggest they've ever been in terms of numbers. They went from 5,000 to about 8,500 after losing the 2,000.
And talking about the human-based members, who, obviously you can't give me names, but who are these people? Do they come from all different walks of life?
The people that are well known are not just chosen because they're well known. Sometimes they become well known already being a part of TLS. It's all about how to have a finger in certain places to influence things and make things move. For example, the latest operation was an infiltration of the Rothschild family. So my mentor, my whatever you want to call it, had to befriend Nathan Jacob Charles Rothschild, whatever his name is, the 87-year-old, based out of, I think, Switzerland or somewhere in Europe, infiltrate in order to change the minds of him and what Ray would call his clan, right, the Rothschild family, on certain decisions that they want to make. So it's all about infiltrating certain places to be able to beat the monster from within. That could be NASA, that could be the Pentagon, it could be the White House, it could be the NSA, it could be whatever it may be. It's literally everything.
So you're really talking about, you know, quite an intelligent person, a charismatic person, someone with a lot of balls and courage to do things like that, to do missions like that. From the members that you've met, would you say that they all meet that kind of archetype?
No. Some people you would meet, they're the opposite of, let's go to spirituality for a second, the opposite of what would be perceived as a spiritually enlightened person. But that doesn't change the fact that they have certain signatures, certain abilities. We all have abilities, right? So I was chosen for a specific task. I was chosen for the task that I do in the organization. I can't do what Ray does, and Ray can't do what I does. We have different signatures, light signatures, whatever you want to call it, like a soul print. Just like we have a fingerprint, think about it like a light print. So there are some people that are not even what you would think they would be, not fitting any stereotype of who they should be in terms of a public figure, but they have receipts. They can do what they do.
From a spiritual aspect, you know, the human body dies and then we go somewhere else, and then most people believe that we're reborn and we come back. And we come back on a mission of sorts to learn certain lessons. Do you feel as though you and these other members perhaps have picked this path, have been earmarked somewhere else for this life with that signature?
Everybody that I work with right now in the organization has a past life connection to me. Past life, reincarnation, all of that is a very, very big part of what we're talking about here. Now, my question, because today I'm 26 years old, my question was when this first started in June of 2018, when I was first approached, I really only understood what was going on 2 years later in 2020. So that made me about 22, 23 years old. Why are you guys coming to me? I'm a young guy, I just finished college. I'm in real estate. I have nothing to do with what the hell you guys are asking me to do. Why are you coming to me? And the answer was always, it's connected to what you've done in other lifetimes, and it's connected to some sort of energy that you carry that we need you to fulfill what we're asking you to fulfill, because only you can do that part, just like only you can do something else, and only somebody else can do something else. It's all a matter of uniqueness for a specific mission, not a chosen one. That's nowhere where this is going. And I really just want to emphasize that fact for a second, because my fear was always that people would hear about TLS and then be like, oh, you know, the saviors, the messiahs. No. That's the opposite of what the organization is trying to do here. And that's probably part of the reason why there's no need to identify who's a part of the organization, because what would that do? The only thing that would do is give somebody a big ego trip and give individuals around the world the ability to outsource their power, which is the opposite of what we need to do if we want to change this world and make it a better place. It's understanding that we have the potential within. We have the ability to do what all the great leaders and religious leaders and spiritual leaders have done in the past. And the purpose of the TLS organization, and part of the reason why I'm sure they remain under secrecy and anonymous, is because identity has nothing to do with it. It's about finding that power within yourself, and they do what they can to assist along the way.
So if people are getting remunerated because, you know, they need to, so they can feed themselves and continue with their missions, where is that money coming from?
The organization is completely self-funded. They have businesses all around the world, hotel businesses, technology businesses, whatever it may be, all legitimate, everything out in the open. The way that the money is used is to fund the operations, is to fund the organization, is to...
So there's no profit or anything like that. It's
Yeah,
more
I
just
mean, it's what people need, you know, and then if there's an agent that's getting paid for a job to do something, that agent can take it into their personal life and invest it and build their own business. That's up to them and how they want to do things privately. But organizationally speaking, it's funded by the organization's businesses itself.
Now, from watching Disclosure, it appears as though some of the agents are given or acquire abilities, like superhuman abilities almost. Can you tell me a little bit about what abilities some of these agents have had and how they get them?
Let me just preface for a few seconds with something. Birds don't need navigation to migrate, and they know where a hurricane or a tornado or whatever disaster is coming up 500 miles ahead. They don't have a weatherman telling them what's going on. We call that natural. A caterpillar transforms and metamorphosizes into a butterfly. That's basically shape-shifting. We call that natural. So when a human being can do something like that, for whatever reason, we call it supernatural, and it's only because we're living subnatural lives. What we call supernatural is natural to each and every one of us. The fact that we're living in a world that's disconnected us from our power because we walk on plastic. We live in toxic environments from beginning to end, from air pollution, radiation, dirty electricity, from beginning to end. All those things have caused us to believe the natural is natural when it's not. It's subnatural. All these agents within TLS are doing, with the help of the organization, is helping develop what we all already have the ability to do. Now, some people are closer to that, and some people are a little further from that, depending on the quality of your body, depending on the quality of light and the light ratio within your body. That's a more like spiritual thing that we're talking about. But you're talking about things like levitation. You're talking about things like telepathic communication. You're talking about things like influencing the mind. So telepathic communication, where I can make you think certain things. Things have been done to me with in Hebrew, because the people that communicate with me are specifically speaking in the Hebrew language, so I translate things a lot. We could speak about that as well. But something's been done to me called Torat HaChalomot. Torat HaChalomot is basically the knowledge and mysticism of dreams, where they can literally come into your dreams while you're sleeping and create a whole scenario, and when you wake up, you'll remember everything. It's crazy. It's been done to me on a personal level. There's something called Torat HaMayim. Torat HaMayim is the knowledge and mysticism of water. It's basically using water as a medium to travel very, very fast and long, far distances. Meaning, you could walk into the ocean here in California, go underwater for about 30 seconds, and walk out at the shore of Tel Aviv in Israel. How do you do that? It's using water as a medium of travel when you understand the mysticism within water. There's something called Torat HaEinayim, the knowledge and mysticism of your eyes. Through your eyes, if you're taught how to do this, it's basically the science of iridology, they call it. This is a public thing, but spiritually speaking. So it's a higher form of iridology, that science. Being able to read past lives, understanding certain qualities within the person, the frequencies, the energies, the dimensions that person holds within them, and their right in front of us potential of what they can do. That's also how they choose certain people and the criteria based on all those things. So you're calling them supernatural, and I understand why, but they're not. We all have the ability to do this. This isn't a game of like superheroes and normal people. This is the fact that we can all show everybody what we all have the ability to do. But yeah, telepathic communication, telekinesis, all those things, very possible, and they use them all the time.
Have you been given any of these abilities?
No. What they've done to me in a certain situation is help shift, call it like dimensions. So let's say you go from beta, brainwave state, to gamma. Somebody like me can't do that in one shot. I won't be able to handle it. I would get electrocuted and die, because it's now electricity. You're speaking about energy. So I've been shifted to certain states. I've been put in a position, for example, called, in Hebrew they call it Tnuchat Ubar, which is basically the fetal position method. I was laying on my left side. I believe it was 2 fingers on my forehead, 2 fingers on my belly button. I was being read for about 10 minutes, and you feel like energy moving through you, and you feel the person In my case, the person was coughing a lot. They were trying to pull something out of me, but also read me at the same time. And it's a matter of being able to move different dimensions so you could see things differently, you can think differently, you can experience things differently. But in terms of doing things like levitation, I'm not there yet. Maybe one day I will be if that's part of my job, but those things are not to be used for fun.
So the abilities are given to, specific abilities are given to specific agents for specific tasks.
Not given. Let's change that word. The agent has it. They're helping to develop what's already inside of you.
Do you think that the more that TLS becomes present in people's minds, the more people that truly believe that they exist and in the powers that they have and the ability to affect change occurs, that people will start to turn away from these more traditional religions and look for something different? Or do you think that these religions will always be a part of our society?
The way that I would answer that is based on the interpretation of the books that we're reading. The Old Testament, the New Testament, the Quran, whatever you want to talk about or focus on. It's not the book that's the issue. As a matter of fact, you want to go to extraterrestrial life, it's the Bibles that they're coming after. It's the codes within the Bibles that they're coming after. But somebody like me or you, and I say, what are you talking about? All they've done was cause war. And my question back to you would be, is it the Bible that's causing war? Or is it our interpretation of the Bible that's causing war? So religion as we know it is not an objective thing. It's a subjective thing. It's based off of the awareness, the consciousness that we're currently at. There was an awareness and level of consciousness that documented, that wrote the Old Testament, the New Testament, that allowed that to flow through and make that a reality. Now let's look at it like this in terms of an analogy. Let's say I'm 4 years old and you're 40 years old. And you look at me and you tell me something about the world. Well, I may understand the words that are coming out of your mouth, but because you have 36 years more experience than I do, the way that you mean it and the way that I understand it are two completely different things. Meaning, if we want to truly unlock the power of the Bibles, the power of those codes, we need to first raise to the level of consciousness and awareness that they were written at, to be able to be in resonance with them, and then we'll understand them in a completely different way. The Bible never caused war. The religious leaders, the people that started spreading those messages through their own corrupted lens, were the ones that caused war.
So do you believe that these messages, and I'll use the Christian religion as an analogy, the Ten Commandments, do you believe that like these rules and regulations were just written 2,000-3,000 years ago and are outdated, or do they resonate with, like, I guess, the teachings of TLS?
So if you ask TLS, they'll tell you, and this was directly to me from Ray's boss, where basically religion is not part of the universal codes. Religion started at a certain point, and if you go to the Old Testament, it literally tells you that point, where it says, B'nai Elohim, the sons of God, came down and mated with the daughters of man. Religion didn't exist before then. Look at our own history. There were ways of life, there were ways of seeing things almost like Buddhism, but there was never religion. Religion came after that, where Judaism came with the retrieval or the reception, the receiving of the Torah on Mount Sinai. After that, Christianity, Islam, and so on and so forth. And from there, war started. But before then, there was none of that in the codes of our experience. So we have to look and focus on what happened when the so-called sons of God, B'nai Elohim, came down and mated with the daughters of man, and why the women, not the men? Why is there a focus on the female essence? And one of the teachings that TLS will give, or gave me to an extent, but I have to go deeper into this, is there was a corruption of the female essence a few thousand years ago between the energy from the sons of God that came down, basically extraterrestrial life, and the daughters of man, human beings that are female. And through that inbreeding, there was a corruption of, call it like spiritual DNA, that started messing up the offspring. And right now we're going through the process of unwinding and untangling that mess, energetically speaking, to eventually get to the same point that we were at thousands of years ago, which is one world, one life, love for all, compassion and unity. That's what the age of love is, and that's where they're trying to bring us to.
It's interesting the way that you explain that, because you know what I do for a living. I delve into, all manner of aliens, UFOs, conspiracy theories, you name it. But throughout my whole career, the idea of having a one world government has been a terrifying one. If you think about communism in China and how that's marginalized so many people, and but the way you are describing it is that it's this fantastic thing. How so? Like, isn't it dangerous to give power to one specific person or leader or group?
The leaders are supposed to be the servants to the people, not the governance of the people. There's a very big difference. So I would agree with you. Right now, I don't think that's possible. It's almost like looking at one single human body. If that human body has cancer, you don't want that body to be united because that cancer is going to spread. That's the purpose of a tumor, to encapsulate the very thing that shouldn't spread throughout your body. But now let's go to a body without cancer, a body in harmony. Wouldn't the natural thing be to have a united body that works together with all its organs? So I agree with you. Right now, we're living in a world where centralization is a very big problem. We have to decentralize in order to eventually get to a point where we can clean ourselves, clean our spirits, clean our souls, to eventually come together where we don't have that corruption, where we don't have that energy of greed and war in our systems. And in a world like that, none of what we're seeing in the world is necessary today. Think of the idea of a passport, of this border that's going to say this is my land and this is yours. No, in a perfect world, this is our land, this is our plan, and we have to live together to support each other. But I understand why that can't be done right now, because that's the whole new world order. Now, we need a different order in the world, but one of unity, compassion, and love. Not what these people are trying to do to unite the world in order to make it easier to take over.
One thing that I come across over and over and over again with my work, in particular, I'm going to quote Dr. Stephen Greer here. He talks a lot about oneness, one consciousness. That consciousness is one entity broken up into 8 billion pieces on this planet, but then more so throughout the universe. Do TLS subscribe to that same thought process?
That's what the age of love is. It's coming back to what they call universal consciousness, universal awareness. It's bringing everything back into oneness, because that's the foundation and fundamentals of everything that is.
How are you receiving this information? I know that you have had some conversations with Ray, your mentor, but is it coming to you in any other way? Are you receiving messages telepathically? Do you have other members of the group that are contacting you? How do you know all of this stuff? Because there's no book, right? There's no TLS manual.
Well, there is a book. They call it Rays of Light. Rays of Light is an 864-page book with over 1 million letters and symbols. Originally written in Hebrew, translated into English. I've only received certain portions of that book. A lot of the information that I'm sharing here is documentation from that book that I've learned and that I've allowed to, really marinate within me to be able to teach and express that. A lot of other parts of it are just my heart speaking. It's not just somebody told me this and I'm sharing. There's some technical details that are briefs and experiences and things like that.
But you feel like you're tapping into like a different strain of that consciousness. You're receiving.
Yeah, it's just love. It's love. It's bringing people together. It's wanting this world to be a better place. And it just so happens to be that my mission resonates with theirs. And I think that's why we work together. But yeah, they see it the same way I do. Sometimes we disagree, most of the times we agree, and it's a process that we have to go through in order to unite and bring everybody together.
Okay, just rewind a little bit. I've read the Bible. I was brought up a Catholic, but I can't really remember them talking about extraterrestrials mating with human beings. So tell me a little bit about that. What is the extraterrestrial connection here between TLS and ETs? What's going on there?
Well, that's a whole story in and of itself. If you want to go down that rabbit hole, I'm more than happy to, but I think that should be its own, focused conversation.
Subscribe.